How you doing? So, if you don't know me, I'm Awake and Weird. I'm one of those TikTok tarot readers. Yeah, you know the ones that are like all into the woo-woo stuff, messing around with cards and that. Yeah, that's me. So, last night I did my first TikTok live stream, and I had about 400 people in at one point. It's pretty good, to be fair. I was only expecting about 50. But anyway, I treated my viewers to a little story of something that happened to me back in October 2023. And it's a bit weird and a bit strange and a bit wet. So I thought I'd make a YouTube video out of it. So here we go. This is the story of Mr. Devil Deck. So back in October 2023, my mate who lives up north was coming down south, and she sent me a message and asked me if I'd like to go to a spirituality shop with her down in London that she'd been looking to visit. And I was like, do you know what, mate? Sounds like a crack. I'm in. Now, this shop is vast. Like, there's so much in this shop. Like, I've never seen a spirituality shop as big as this one. Now, we were in there for about 2 hours, right? And something weird happened around 45 minutes in, right? So my mate, she pointed out a book on a shelf called The Queen of Wands. Now, if you're unfamiliar with tarot, the Queen of Wands is a card in the tarot deck. She's known as the witch of the tarot deck because she has a black cat at her feet. The person on the front of this book wasn't a picture of the Queen of Wands. It was a picture of Pamela Colman Smith. Now, Pamela Colman Smith drew the Rider-Waite-Smith deck back in 1909, and I simply pointed this out to my mate, that the person on the cover drew the Rider-Waite-Smith deck, hence the name, right? And out of nowhere, this dude just appeared next to me. Now, when I say appeared, it wasn't like a ghostly apparition or anything strange like that. This person was real. Like, they were a real person. And this guy was incredibly eccentric and pretty theatrical, is probably the best way to put it. And out of nowhere, he just said, "I beg your pardon." And I was like, "The person on the front of the book, mate." I said, "Yeah, it's Pamela Colman Smith." I said, "She drew the Rider-Waite deck in 1909. He said, "I did not know this." Well, you do now, innit? He proceeds to then just talk a lot about tarot and stuff that he knows. And all the while I'm thinking to myself, you know, all this stuff about tarot, but you didn't know Pamela Colman Smith drew the Rider-Waite-Smith deck in 1909. He then proceeded to start talking about a particular deck that he owns called, he said it in French, but the translation is the Triumph of the Moon. I hadn't heard of this deck before, and he told me that he had a copy of it, and he just so happened to work about 500 yards from this shop. "You must come by and see this deck. It's incredible. The artwork is incredible." So like, alright then, no worries. So we said goodbye to him, and me and my mate wandered off, and we were in this shop for a good 45 minutes, an hour more, before we decided to leave. And as we go to leave the shop, matey boy is stood outside his place of work, holding a deck of cards. And I thought, well, he's keen, that's for sure. So, we take a look at his cards, right? Now, I noticed, as he was flicking through them, there was several devil cards, several tower cards, and several judgment cards. Now again, if you're unfamiliar with tarot, the devil is all about obsession and temptation and toxicity. The tower in the tarot deck is all about destruction and upheaval, and judgment is all about reckoning and karma. So to see several of these different cards in the same deck was weird to me. I thought, why? Why do you need to have several different devil, tower and judgment cards? I didn't question it, I just thought it was weird. As he's showing us this deck of cards, I'm looking at him and I'm thinking to myself, I feel like I know him from somewhere. He seems familiar to me. Why does he seem familiar? And then just as I'm thinking this, he says out loud to me, "You're awfully familiar, by the way." We said goodbye to this dude and we wandered off around the corner. And we were walking down this side street out onto the main road, and there was a huge theatre in front of us. And this theatre had a huge sign out the front for a play that was currently on at this particular theatre. And it just so happened to be called Past Lives. So this is where it gets really weird. So as we were coming out of London, we had to get on the underground. We were stood in this tube station and I noticed a great big billboard with a huge phone number written across it. And this phone number had 222 in the middle of it. And I pointed it out to my mate. It's like, 222. She was like, "I'm not too familiar with numerology." She said, "What does 222 mean?" I said, "It means you're in the right place at the right time." So when I went home, I hadn't pulled cards for myself all day. Now usually I would pull cards 3-4 times a day at this point because I was still learning to read cards, and it was about a week before I started doing tarot on TikTok. But yeah, I went home, sat down at my kitchen table and I pulled these cards. Now if you're not familiar with tarot, I'm going to break that reading down for you a little bit later on in this video. But I read this reading with the knowledge that tarot is all about you. And ever since I pulled this reading, tarot isn't all about you. This was about me and somebody else. At this particular time, I was discovering what clairaudience was. Now, if you're not familiar with clairaudience, clairaudience means clear hearing. Now, this can manifest in different ways. So one of the strongest signs for clairaudience is hearing the same thing in different places. For example, hearing a song on the radio at home and then going into the shop 2 hours later and hearing the same song, and then as you're walking home a car drives by and it's blaring on the radio. That is a message from spirit. Now around this time I kept hearing the words, "I don't chase, I attract," and I kept hearing it everywhere. Now I knew this was a message from spirit, but I kind of went against it because I felt like I missed something. I felt like something was supposed to play out with this person that I met in London, but I wasn't sure exactly what it was. So I remembered clearly what the shop was called. I remembered the person's name, and I googled the shop, found the website, and boom, there was his phone number. And I thought, Well, if it was that easy, it was meant to be, right? Ah, I forgot to mention something about the reading that I pulled when I got home from London that night. If you take a look at the picture, there's the Two of Cups, Two of Swords, and the High Priestess. 2, 2, 2. I went to bed that night and I couldn't sleep. I just kept tossing and turning. I kept thinking to myself, like, what exactly is Spirit trying to show me here? There was something that was supposed to play out and I still don't understand exactly what this was supposed to be. The next morning, I woke up and I checked my phone and I noticed somebody had pocket called me on Instagram 3 times at exactly 2:22 a.m. I thought, what's with all the twos, man? What's with all the twos? I must have missed something. I must have missed something. Now that morning when I was getting ready for the gym, I kept feeling sick. Now I put it down to the fact that the day before I didn't eat very much, and then when I got home I ate quite late, and then I went to bed not long after that. But now I know that that wasn't the case. It was something else. So obviously I've got his number at this point. And when I get back from the gym, about 11 o'clock in the morning, I decide to text him. Now he didn't reply for about 4 hours. And when he did, this theatrical, charismatic person that I met the day before wasn't there anymore. And immediately alarm bells went ringing off in my head. He told me that he'd gone home that night and he'd mentioned me to his girlfriend. And then that night he'd had a dream about me. And in that dream, I was a purple cat. He said, I knew it was you. I knew it was you because you were adorned with the spiritual wards you wore yesterday when I met you. The next thing he said sent chills down my spine. Baron Samedi, as in the Baron Samedi, as in the voodoo, hoodoo entity of the crossroads, the cemeteries and the graves. Yeah, I do know who Baron Samedi is as it goes. So what really set me off here is that why was a white man talking to me about voodoo? I thought, if anything, that don't sit right with me because as far as I'm concerned, you don't mess with shit that's not your culture. Now I don't mess with that kind of stuff. I don't mess with anything dark because you just don't know what you're playing with, you know? I respect people that do, and I'm sure there's plenty of people out there that do it safely, but I'm not going to touch it. He then starts quoting Shakespeare at me in voice messages. Stuff out of Macbeth, straight up. I'm just like, this geezer is mental. Like, he is off the cuff fucking mad. I told him about the past lives thing that I saw on the theatre the day before. You must take heed of these signs. So then we got into the conversation of my awakening. Now I was very, very cagey about the information that I told him. The reason why is that I didn't know this person's intentions. This guy had already mentioned voodoo to me, and I was like, yeah boy, like, I ain't playing games with you, man, no way. At no point did I ever confront him about anything. I just let him talk himself in circles, to be honest. I told him that I felt like I had a higher purpose, but I wasn't sure exactly what this was. And he said to me, maybe you have awakened for no reason at all. Nah. Like, you ain't gonna sit there and gaslight me into thinking that I've been through hell this last year for no reason at all. Because this guy had a lot of knowledge about tarot, I thought I'd run rings around him a bit more. So I asked him about the cards that I pulled the night before, and I sent him a picture of them. I sent him this picture. He said to me, There's some very powerful cards there. Then he said, but I'm unfamiliar with the 8-card tarot spread that you've used here. I thought to myself, mate, I don't do tarot spreads, I channel spirit, do you know what I mean? I didn't say this to him, like I kept playing dumb. I kept playing dumb. This is where I'm conflicted about how tarot's read. So, a lot of people will say that tarot is all about you. So every single card is a process or something that's going on in your life. It's all about you. This reading wasn't just about me. So, if you look to the far left, you have the Fool in reverse and then the Magician in reverse, and it's clarified with the Two of Cups. So the Two of Cups being two people coming together. It's normally seen as like the soulmate card, right? Now the Fool in reverse is somebody being naive, somebody who is taking a blind leap of faith. The Magician in reverse is somebody that's being manipulative towards this Fool in reverse, this naive energy. He thought I was stupid. Now you also have the Two of Swords and the High Priestess. Two of Swords is known as the Little High Priestess. The High Priestess is all about intuition, gut instinct, secrets, the subconscious mind, and the Two of Swords implies disconnection from intuition due to the blindfold around the person's eyes. He thought I was stupid. Then I had the Ace of Wands, and then the Seven of Wands underneath that, and the Eight of Wands on the bottom of the deck. So the Ace of Wands and the Seven of Wands being the olive branch, and then the Seven being the protection, and then the Eight of Wands being the communication. So the Ace of Wands and the Seven of Wands making the Eight of Wands, and the Eight of Wands was on the bottom of the deck. So then he switched it up a gear. I recommend you do this particular spread. And he sent me this. This was my only question that I had to him the entire conversation that I had with him. I said, out of all the tarot spreads that you could have picked, why did you pick that one? He said, it's best you don't ask questions. I thought, this guy thinks I'm an absolute idiot, doesn't he? He thinks I'm stupid. He then proceeded to send me this. I said, yeah. I said, Baphomet. I said, yeah, I know who Baphomet is. He said, no, it's the Goat of Mendes. I said, yeah. I said, the Goat of Mendes is Baphomet. Now, I'm going to show you something. I own this tarot deck. This is the Occult Tarot. Now, they have an angel version of this as well. The Magician in this deck is Baphomet. Baphomet isn't the devil, but Baphomet is the conjurer. Baphomet makes things happen. He thought I was stupid. And if you thought that was dumb, he then said to me, and I do recommend that you say each of the questions as you pull the cards into a mirror. Mirrors. Mate, what the hell is this? Anybody that's into witchcraft or spirituality, any kind of spirituality will know that mirrors are portals. You don't mess with mirrors like that. Now the thing is that I was curious at this point, because he told me what the first question was to this tarot spread, and the question was, what is holding you? Now, I didn't tell him what the card was, but I was curious to know exactly what information he was trying to get out of me. And I pulled the Hermit in reverse. Now, the Hermit, the nines are all about conclusions. And these conclusions are always done alone. So it's implying that I'm alone. It's implying that I'm soul searching. It's implying that I'm on a spiritual journey. But in reverse, it suggests I'm also vulnerable and easy to isolate. Again, he thought I was stupid, didn't he? What an idiot. He only told me the first question of this tarot spread, and then he disappeared for 2 hours. And I knew what his tactic was here. It was to create a trauma bond with me. He wanted to make sure that I was left panicking, needing to know exactly what that tarot spread that I'd sent him actually meant. But I knew exactly what it meant. He just thought I didn't. He came back 2 hours later, and at that point I decided to ghost him. I thought, nah, I've had enough of this. He's a weirdo. He's tried to get me to do something really strange. I've asked him why. He wouldn't tell me why. He's obviously a predator. 2 weeks later, he comes back. When I met him in London, he told me he was going to a wedding up north in a few weeks. Now, I'm not exactly sure why he told me this, but I remember it being part of the conversation. When he texted me 2 weeks later, he'd just come back from this wedding up north to tell me that he'd had a delivery of tarot decks that he'd bought from eBay. He also told me that he'd done a tarot reading for a stranger on a train, and this woman seemed to be incredibly fascinated and intrigued by tarot, and she was meeting up with him the following week. Again, I'm not an idiot. It was clearly to try and make me feel jealous that I was missing out on something because he had knowledge that I didn't. I decided to go through the conversation again, and there was one thing that stuck out to me, and then suddenly it hit me like a ton of bricks. So I take screenshots all the time of things that I see online, particularly things with angel numbers on. Regardless of what platform it's on, if I see numbers, I'm taking screenshots. Now, there was a tarot reading on TikTok that I saw, and it had 111 in the likes. And this particular reading didn't resonate with me at the time, but it was somebody doing black magic. In the initials that were on the screen, his initials were in this reading. It said that this person was using dark magic in order to mess with somebody's root chakra and their crown chakra. So your root chakra being at the very bottom, it's your sexuality basically, and your crown is the top of your head. If you mess with both chakras, you mess up every single chakra on the way down. That is why I kept feeling sick that morning. I also remembered another reading that I saw on TikTok. Now this had 1111 in the likes. Now 1111 is the manifestation number. 111 is pay attention, it's intuition. But 1111 is something that's manifesting. And this man who was doing this reading was saying he could see somebody clairvoyantly playing chess with the devil. He said it looks like the devil's going to win, but then all of a sudden you put his king in checkmate, and that's it, game over. You busted him, and it all just flooded to me. In that moment, I was like, holy shit, holy fucking shit. I'd also seen another post on TikTok that I didn't understand again, and it had 1010 in the likes. 10's a new beginnings. And this said that men were liars. In the comments, somebody had commented with no words needed, 2, 2, 2. There's the 2's again. I ignored it. I thought, nah, I'm done with this game. But anyway, 5 hours later, he texts me again. And this message, no word of a lie, as I opened it on my phone, I became so dizzy, I couldn't see the words on the screen. This guy basically gaslighted me. He said, "You are being manipulated." And I hope you can come to terms with that. That's why I recommended the Baphomet spread. I was concerned for your safety. I always recommend to do tarot readings into a mirror because this gives the most honest answers. He then went on to quote something out of the Lord of the Rings and then told me something about the devil card in the tarot deck. And then he told me that he wasn't one that brought the evil. I did. And then he blocked me. You were concerned for my safety, were you? I'm sure you were. That night, when I went to bed, I had a dream. I had a dream that I was in a bar. And from my premise in the dream, I was looking after this bar for someone. And I remember it being very dark in this bar. There was no one in there but me, and I was sat right in the corner at the back. It was very, very dark in there, and I could see the doors open at the other end of the bar, and it was really, really bright outside, like really sunny. And somebody I knew walked by. She just happens to be a witch, by the way. Like, I know this girl in real life. She walked by and she was like, "What are you doing in the dark? Why don't you come out in the sun? Like, what are you doing in there? Like, come out into the sun." And I got up and I walked out of the bar into the sunlight. It was really, really bright out. It's really sunny. She said, come down with me. She said, "We'll get a drink." And there was a few people out the front of this pub, and they were all drinking, they were all laughing and stuff. And me and this girl were having a drink. And we were talking about photography. And then I cut the conversation and I said to her, "I need to go back and check on the bar. Like, I'll be back in a minute." And I walked down this little, like, narrow street. And to my left, there was a big round window. I can see all the brickwork around the window, the leading on the window, you know. And this window opened, and a head popped up. And who was it? It was Baron Samedi. And he looked at me and he said, "Don't worry, it's all in hand." And then he started cackling with laughter. And as I heard the cackle of the laughter, I woke up. And that, my friend, is where my story ends.